We are back mock drafting. We have round 2 of our Dynasty rookie Superflex non-tight end premium mock draft. If you guys haven't seen the video released of round 1, go out and go back and check it out. That is released already. We are using landing spots, which is a lot of fun to see. We're living in a world where these players have teams and kind of approaching the draft as if, well, what if they got drafted to these players? So you can see on the board there. Again, this is a super flex, non-tight end premium Dynasty rookie mock draft. And you can see round 1 there. And I mentioned it, to me, as of right now, it's February 23rd. We're a week before the combine starts, so there's still a lot that can change. But as of right now, to me, there's a tier 1 of 3 players. It's Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jaden Daniels. I think, honestly, you can make an argument for any one of those players to go number 1 overall. I know a lot of people will say, well, what about Drake May? I just don't know if you can make an argument for Drake May over Caleb or Jaden Daniels. The reason why you can make an argument for Jaden Daniels over Caleb is because of his rushing ability. So I think that gives Jaden Daniels, for fantasy football, a possible edge there. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, could be the first overall pick. Again, we are using landing spots, and in this draft, the Bears actually traded back up to the 103 and took Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Bears get Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think if that happens, I'm definitely taking Caleb 101 because now he has DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and Marvin Harrison Jr. to throw to. That's awesome. My 4th pick, and to me, according to the landing spots here, Drake May was kind of the in a tier of his own here in the Superflex. He went to the 104 to the Broncos, who traded up. Malik Neighbors went next, who went 12th overall to the Cardinals. JJ McCarthy is the 6th pick here. He went 13th in this mock draft to the Raiders. By the way, I left a link to the mock draft in the description, so you can check that out. I think it's a 3-round mock draft. Rome Odunze goes next. He went 14th to the Saints. Brock Bowers went 8th overall. He went 5th to the Chargers. Brian Thomas Jr. went 17th to the Jags. Bo Nix was the first pick of the 2nd round, and he went to the Vikings. Keon Coleman was a first-round receiver taken. He was the last first-round receiver taken, 25th overall to the Chiefs, which is obviously a nice spot for people. And then Xavier Worthy, who was taken in the 2nd round, 60th overall to the Bills. But I mentioned in the video yesterday, I just like Xavier Worthy, so I'm willing to kind of reach on him a little bit when we get into the mid-2nd round receivers. So there you have it, guys. Again, if you want more detail, more explanation, go ahead and watch that first video. But without further ado, we're going to get back into it again. This is such a deep draft for rookies this year. You should be really, really happy if you have a lot of picks in the first 15, top 15, top 17, all the way to like the mid-2nd round, because there's a lot of good picks. So much so there's still a first-round player on the board. But I think what I would do here, and I'm not going to worry too much about what I did to start the draft. I just always generally take best player available, and I don't draft for, well, I took a quarterback here, I'm not going to take another quarterback. I'm going to take a quarterback here, Michael Penix Jr. I think he's a junior. Michael Penix out of Washington. In this draft here, Michael Penix went in the 2nd round to the Seahawks, 50th overall. And I just think in a Superflex, it's way too valuable to let that slip. I know there's still a first-round player on the board. There's still a couple running backs and receivers taken ahead of Penix. But again, Superflex, man, they're just so valuable. If you hit on one of these guys, their value is through the roof compared to a running back or a wide receiver. So I'm going to go ahead and take Michael Penix there, even though I did take Caleb Williams with that team here. And again, I'm trying to approach this a little bit from not just what I would do, but how I think it's going to play out if the NFL draft were to happen this way. I think that's more helpful for you guys overall, because I'm not drafting in your leagues, right? So I kind of want to, it makes more sense for me to kind of go with, well, this is how I think it's going to go. Sometimes I'll lean towards what I would do if it's kind of a tiebreaker, but I'm generally kind of going with what I would go with. For example, Brock Bowers here. Honestly, I think I might take Brian Thomas over Brock Bowers if it were to play out this way, with Brian Thomas being a 17th overall, just because I think, tight ends in a non-tight end premium, there's very few that are difference makers, and you really have to be in that top 3 to be a difference maker. So, but I do think when people see Brock Bowers of the Chargers, they're going to kind of overdraft him. So kind of the same thing here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take another tight end, which is a little surprising. But again, we're living in the world here of this NFL mock draft, NFL.com mock draft. And Ja'Tavion Sanders, who's considered the tight end 2 in this class, he went in the first round, 21st overall to the Dolphins. People are going to see that, and they're going to overdraft Ja'Tavion Sanders. They're not going to let him fall much further than the early second round, in my opinion, because it's a good landing spot. He's obviously the best tight end there. Miami's an explosive offense. Ja'Tavion Sanders seems to fit kind of that Miami style. And, Miami can use a third weapon for sure. I know it's all been Tyreek and Waddle the last couple of years, but I think that's more just due to a lack of a third weapon rather than them just funneling it between 3 guys. So I think Ja'Tavion Sanders going first overall to the Dolphins is too much to pass up on. And that's it for our first rounders. Our first rounders are done. Again, it's pretty awesome that you can get a player taken in the first round with the 202. That wasn't the case last year. Was not I think Charbonnet or Achane, players like that who were drafted in the second or third round were going in this range already. We were out of first round picks within the first 7-8 picks, if I remember correctly. So now we're going to get to the point of the draft where people are going to start looking at running backs, even though the running back class isn't that great this year. There's still some players that I think can be good players, and people are always going to covet running backs. Everyone needs running backs. There's not enough good running backs. So you're going to see running backs go in this range, in my opinion. And you know what? There's a couple that I like in this draft. One of them is Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Now, I know he tore his ACL, so that's something to pay attention to. But in this world that we're living, he went with the 39th overall pick, so a high second-round pick, to the New York Giants. So I assume if that were to happen, that means Saquon Barkley's gone. So it's kind of Jonathan Brooks' backfield. It's his backfield. I think he's a really good player. He was easily the number 1 running back, in my opinion, if he didn't tear his ACL. Now that he did tear his ACL kind of late in the year, it was in November, are you going to get a little bit of a wash year? His first year, maybe, or at least the first 5-6 weeks potentially. But I assume if he's going 39th overall, the Giants aren't too worried about his injury, and they think he can, contribute to the team in year 1, or else, I don't know if you're going to spend that high of a draft pick on him. So I'm kind of approaching it from that point of view. Jonathan Brooks there. There's still a couple receivers on the board that had a high draft capital, being Adonai Mitchell and Johnny Wilson. I think seeing a player go 40th overall is a little bit hard to pass up on. Now, he did get put on a team where there's a lot of it's a crowded backfield, but there's a coaching change here. That is Adonai Mitchell went 40th overall to the Commanders, so I'll take him here. Top 40 is usually where you want to be. I know a lot of people talk about first-round receivers, but honestly, if you look at the numbers historically, if you look at from receivers drafted 20th overall to 40th overall, there's not a huge difference. Top 10 receivers are a different story. Top 15 receivers are a different story. But that range from 20 to 40 is where you want other receivers to be drafted. So, Adonai Mitchell gets the really good draft capital. He does go to the Commanders, who now have Jaden Daniels as the quarterback, according to this draft. But obviously, McLaurin's there, Dotson's there. It's not the greatest situation, but give it a year and a lot can change, right? A lot can change. New coaching staff, so obviously they like him. McLaurin could be gone from the team. He's also getting a little bit older after this 2024 year. Maybe Jahan Dotson just isn't that good, even though he's a former first-round pick. There's a lot that can change. So I'll go ahead and take Adonai Mitchell there. Yeah, now it's getting a little bit tougher. Now when we get to this point of the draft where there's a lot of players that are drafted between pick mid-second round to late second round, I think you can kind of reach for the guys that you really, really like. And that's what I'm going to do in this situation. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys drafted ahead of this player that I'm going to take, and that is Troy Franklin. I really, really like Troy Franklin. I don't think he drops this far in the draft. He's in this draft, he goes 62nd overall, so he's barely a second-round pick. Just at the end of the second round, he goes to the Ravens, and I think he can step in there and be the best wide receiver. I know people love Zay Flowers. I like Zay Flowers as just, not just as a football player for my team, as a fantasy player, we'll see what his ceiling is. Is he going to kind of be just like that top 24 receiver, wide receiver 20, 24 every year? Can he reach higher levels? Probably can, but is it likely? I don't know. And they take Troy Franklin here. Obviously, Ravens, they're not the best landing spot for receivers, but I just love Troy Franklin. I think he's awesome. I think, to me, he's my wide receiver 4 in this class after Odunze, Harrison, or Harrison Neighbors Odunze, and then it's Troy Franklin. So he didn't get the draft capital that I would love. So you got to kind of respect that. And I think if he does go late second, you could see him fall to the mid second. And I think that's really good value. If you're sitting there with the 205 and you get Troy Franklin, I would love that. So I think that's a really interesting pick there. I'll probably take another running back here, and I'm going to take a guy, again, that I really like out of Tennessee, Jalen Wright, who has a lot of things that I like about him. I think he's one of the sneakier picks in this, running back picks in this draft. He's like one of maybe 3 or 4 running backs that I can see from year one just kind of really making a difference. And he goes 56th overall to the Cowboys. So again, I assume if this happens, that means no Tony Pollard. So you get Jalen Wright in there. We were disappointed by Pollard last year, but obviously you get the Cowboys, their offense. You get Jalen Wright, a young running back who's his competition there. Assuming they don't bring anyone else in, of high caliber or name caliber. I like Jalen Wright there at the 206, and I think a lot of people are going to see the Cowboys next to him, and they're not going to let him get past them. And then I will take another receiver who I'm not super high on, but in this draft, he does go top 46. He goes 46th overall. And he's been falling lately, and honestly, I don't think he's going to go this high. That's Johnny Wilson out of FSU, so that's 2 FSU wide receivers that are gone already. I don't think Johnny Wilson's going to go this high. He's huge. He's like 6'7". There's just a lot lacking in his tape. There's a lot of red flags, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest Johnny Wilson fan, but this is what I mean, guys, where I'm approaching this from how I think it might play out if the NFL draft happened this way. But also, you got to respect draft capital at times. Like, even if you love a guy, but he goes in the 4th round, you probably shouldn't be taking him over a guy who's picked 40th overall in the draft, right? Let the NFL, the professionals, let them tell you how they feel about these players, and a combination of how you feel about them, and let them tell you. So that's where you have to take draft capital into account a little bit. So I'll take a chance on Johnny Wilson. He goes to the Colts, 46th overall in this mock draft. Again, not my favorite prospect, but it's hard to pass up an early 2nd round pick at wide receiver there. Next on the list, this is tough. I'll probably take another intriguing running back here. There's 3 running backs that went in the second. 4 running backs that went in the 2nd round. 2 of them we already taken, Jonathan Brooks and Jalen Wright. Another one that went in the 2nd round is Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. And this dude was potentially RB1 when we started the college year in 2023. He kind of fell off a little bit in terms of just his explosive plays and things like that. His production was still there. I think he was still over 30% of Wisconsin's offense, which is a huge number for a running back to have. And that includes passing numbers. So Braylon Allen is a beast of a man. He's like 6'2", 230 or something, 240. He's huge. He could probably afford to slim down a bit. But he gets to a nice spot. I don't know if I said it, but he's 58th overall to the Packers. So obviously Aaron Jones is going to be there one more year, but Braylon Allen automatically comes into 2024, takes over the A.J. Dillon role. And we know that A.J. Dillon had value last year, especially when Aaron Jones was hurt. And then after 2024, it could be his backfield on a young offense with a good offensive mind, a potentially really good offense with Jordan Love, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and now you add Braylon Allen in there. He could be scoring a lot of touchdowns if this offense is really good. I love that spot, that landing spot for Braylon Allen. Early, mid to late 2nd round pick, but gets to the Packers. So I love that there. There's still 2 2nd round picks on the board. I'm kind of just looking down the list. And there's a couple guys that I do really like that are 3rd rounders. Do I like them enough to take the? Well, I'll tell you this much. There's a player here that I think is I'm not super high on. It's another running back. It's the last running back taken in the second round. But the production that he had out of Michigan was massive. Blake Corum, that is. He's actually the first running back in this draft. So I personally took 3 running backs over him that I like a little more, and I like their landing spot a little bit more. However, I do have to acknowledge that there's a chance that if he is the first running back taken off the board, that he's the first running back taken in rookie drafts. So I'm not going to let him fall out of the second round. I'm not going to let him fall past the 209. He goes 34th overall. So he was the third pick the second pick in the second round here. And he goes to the Patriots, which, Ramondre Stevenson's still there on a rookie contract, I believe 1 more year. So I don't think he's going to get the whole backfield to himself. Also, the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, Alex Van Pelt, he comes from the Browns system. He was there for like the last 4 or 5 years. He was their offensive coordinator since 2020, I believe. And what did the Browns do? They ran 2 running backs all the time, Chubb and Hunt. Jerome Ford and Hunt. They were always running 2 running backs. So it was a little frustrating because it works out because Nick Chubb was so good and efficient. And so was Kareem Hunt there for a couple of years. But ideally, you want the whole backfield. But I could see them implementing Corum and Stevenson into their game plan. This team's, if they don't get a quarterback, and in this draft, they don't get a quarterback. They traded out of the 103, and I don't know what they picked up, to be honest. But they traded out of the 103, and so they didn't get a quarterback here. So they're going to be running the ball a lot. So I can't pass up the fact that Blake Corum in this world is the number 1 running back off the board. I'm not super excited about him. He wasn't super elusive, wasn't super explosive. It's just kind of like, was he a product more of the system? The offensive line for Michigan was, as close to an NFL offensive line as you can get for college football. And so I think Blake Corum really, he obviously benefited from that and just getting the ball so much. So, but again, got to respect the draft capital. A couple more players here. Just double checking. Okay. I don't think this guy's going to fall this far, potentially. He's getting a lot of hype lately, ever since like the Senior Bowl. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. Ladd McConkey's an interesting one. I know he's getting a whole lot of hype because, again, Senior Bowl and just like people looking at his film and stuff like that. Wasn't super productive in college in terms of percentage of the team's passing or receiving offense, but was just always making big plays for a team. It's going to be interesting to see if he goes to the right system and right team. I really like Ladd McConkey. If he doesn't go to the right team, I'm a little bit less excited about him. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know if he's ever going to get to be like a top 15 receiver. He's just going to be a consistent top 30 receiver year in and year out. He has, he's kind of that slot receiver, whatever. I don't know yet. I can't predict the future. Anyone who tells you what's going to happen with him is lying. But Ladd McConkey in this draft goes in the second round, 61st overall to the Lions. The landing spot is kind of like, it's not the greatest. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta and McConkey. It just feels like they all kind of, they don't complement each other very well in an offensive system, I guess. Like you have like Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown can complement each other quite well, in my opinion. Amon-Ra St. Brown is that chain mover, over the field, high volume guy. Jameson Williams is the guy who can give you a huge fantasy week on 4 catches. They complement each other well. Ladd McConkey, St. Brown, Laporta, even Jahmyr Gibbs, if you want to throw him in there, they just feel like they don't complement each other very well. So, it's not the greatest landing spot, but he does get second round draft capital. It is a good offense with a established quarterback there. So I'll go ahead and take that. And so now we're, there's only one more player in the second round in this NFL mock draft that hasn't been taken. It's a tight end. I personally haven't done a whole lot of tight end scouting, so I'm not going to take him. He does go Ben Sinnott, I believe it is. He goes second round to the 49ers, which is actually a really intriguing landing spot. But I want to, be able to give you guys a little bit of, how I feel about this player, and I haven't scouted the tight ends yet. So, okay, I'm going to finish this draft off with two guys that I am really, really interested in. One of them is Malachi Corley, who, again, when we get to these players that are being drafted in the third round of the NFL draft, late second, I think you can kind of reach it. We're at the end of the second round. The odds that these players all hit anyways are very low. So take the guys that you really believe in. One, trust yourself, trust what you think and how you feel. And two, it just feels so much better when it's like, man, I had a strong feeling about Malachi Corley. Maybe I took him 5 picks too early, but he was my guy. I wanted him and I got him and he turned out. That's great. I felt that way to Tank Dell last year for a couple drafts. Like, I traded up to get him. He was my guy though, and I loved it. So Malachi Corley here. He goes 79th overall to the Falcons, which I know a lot of people are like, the Falcons. I don't think that's that bad of a spot. They got a new coaching staff in there from the Rams tree, and Zach Robinson's the offensive coordinator. They hopefully will be getting a quarterback, either Justin Fields or another quarterback to be consistent there. And really, you have Drake London, you have Bijan, you have Kyle Pitts, but Kyle Pitts is already coming up on potentially his last year with the Falcons, depending on what they do. Malachi Corley, just again, I talked about it with the compliment. He just complements those players so well. Drake London is your X receiver down the field, makes those contested catches. Kyle Pitts can even be played like that, just like the intermediate route type of player. And then Malachi Corley plugs into the slot, the guy who's always in motion, takes jet sweeps, bubble screens. I'm really, really interested in Malachi Corley. I talked about him. I made a draft profile video about him, and he's just a really hard prospect to completely know what he's going to turn out to be, because like a third or 40% of his catches were bubble screens behind the line of scrimmage stuff. So, I do believe in him. He could turn into more of like a Jaden Reed or Deebo Samuel, or he could turn into a Rondale Moore. We don't know yet, but I'm going to take a chance on him at the end of the second round. And to kind of finish it up, to me, the RB2 in this draft, now he wasn't drafted that way, which is why I didn't take him, but Trey Benson here out of FSU goes to the Browns. Third round, 85th overall. Really, really nice landing spot for running backs lately. Chubb coming off a major injury. Kareem Hunt's probably gone. He's a little bit over the hill. Jerome Ford was fine last year, but he wasn't this amazing running back. He seems more like, a RB2 at best. Trey Benson, to me, it's between him and Jonathan Brooks as my RB1 in this class. And I can make an argument for Trey Benson. Now, again, doesn't get the draft capital I would have liked, but I do like where he went. And I'm totally fine with a third-round running back. They could definitely, pan out. He is the 6th running back off the board in this NFL mock draft, so he's my 5th running back here. So, yeah, that is round 2. Now, again, man, if you just look at it, there's still one player who was taken in the 2nd round in this NFL mock draft who's not even drafted, right, in this rookie draft. There's 4 guys who are drafted within the first 10 picks of the 3rd round who are still on the board for you in the 3rd round of your rookie mock draft. There's so much value in this year's draft that even if you have mid to late 2nd round picks, early thirds, you stocked up on them, you should feel pretty happy with those picks, because you're going to potentially get guys that are in normal years are going to be more early 2nd round picks, right? But they're going in the early 3rd just because there's so much talent in this year's draft. So there you have it, guys. I wanted to get this out. Again, we're a week before Combine, so we'll be doing more of these, especially after the Combine. But I wanted to get one of these out before. And I'll probably be back doing a first round of a 1 quarterback league if you're interested in that. But as always, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.